Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more things you didn't know in Dragons Dogma 2. These are interesting, weird, unexpected details, might just be helpful in the gameplay or just fun to learn. It's becoming a bit of a series now as we're on to episode 4, and for that I definitely need to say thank you to everyone who gets involved in these videos. That's been really helpful for me, so I'll continue to call out anyone's info that I'm drawing from. And with that said, let's get started. We kick today's episode off with a pretty important thing, the most talked about topic or discussion in the comments of the last video. As you know, when you are running any vocation, you can alter its augments. In the first bit of that video that I did, I was talking about what this actually does, what every augment truly means. For example, this one increases the amount of health recovered by curatives and curative magics, but what does that actually mean? By how much? Turns out it's a 10% increase. And we know that by data mining that reveals the actual values of these things. Obviously, it'd be really nice if they just included this in the game so we don't have to do this outside stuff, but still I wanted to include a section about what these actually do, and that's what the point of that section was. So for a verve, what you're getting in reality is exactly 30 points of strength while that's equipped. And the same is for the magic increase, it's 30 points of magic. On this character on this save, I currently have 240 base strength and I'm getting 60 extra from a few other things. Let's say I have 600 strength. If I slap on verve, what's 630 compared to 600? It would be better if it was percent based like the original game. At least that's what a lot of people said in the comments. But it was Omni Aesthetic in the comments who actually highlighted how maybe people are misunderstanding this. But Omni pointed out that the way that DD1 calculated damage is very likely the same in this game. Omni explained that the way damage is actually calculated is the monster's physical or magical defense that subtracts from your strength or magic. Omni's example was a nice one. If you have 600 strength and the enemy has 520 physical defense, the numbers kind of collide, so it's 600 minus 520. Each attack you do, by default, is 80 damage. How it really works is more complicated than that, as Omni explains, but to keep it basic so people can understand, in that specific example, if I did slap on the verve augment, I'd go from 80 damage to another 30 on top, so 110. That's actually quite the big increase. It seems the higher defense, whether that's physical or magical for whatever you're doing, the more impact these augments will actually have to get through the damage and majorly increase your DPS. So maybe, despite what a lot of people seem to think, maybe they're actually quite good augments. Next up, a little fun note to do with your pawns. As you likely know, pawns come with inclinations, as well as specializations like how I can trade with this guy. If we go to Wild Rose's status though, we can see more detail. We can see that their inclination is simple, so they're curious, earnest, adventurous, enjoys exploring and gathering. This means if you have a simple pawn, you can kind of do silly things with them. For example, if you pick up an animal and throw it to them, they will prepare to catch it and do their best to do so. Some of them are better than others, and depending on like their strength level, they'll be able to catch bigger animals. Like they really struggle to catch these goats, whereas when I grab something smaller like this rabbit, it's much more consistent. They can actually grab it. They'll be excited, they'll exclaim it. They're actually quite cute in this moment. Listen.
This is such fun!
And obviously, they throw it back to you, like playing a fucked up game of catch. Now, I will admit that when I first saw this, I saw like balls being thrown, so they're like bulbous and comical when you're throwing these things. So I went to try it myself and found that it just didn't work. Not a single one of my pawns would catch these goats, so I ended up just killing a lot of them trying to get this to work. That's when I realized it must be to do with their inclination. I went and swapped out my pawns and picked up a couple that had the simple inclination, these curious, more adventurous types, and these are the kind of pawns you can get to do silly things like this. And it makes me wonder beyond this silly catch and throw animals thing, what else will pawns of this nature do? Or even what about the other inclinations? What are they willing to do compared to the others? Still, something like this is very silly and appreciated. It makes the pawns feel a little bit more real, which is important. So for our next thing, we're standing here at the Medusa layer at the southwest point of the Batal region. Now, if you're unaware, I've made a video talking about the Medusa fight and all the different ways you can defeat her. A key mechanic of the Medusa fight is how she has two really important hitboxes, all of her and then her head. And if you deal slashing damage of any kind, whatever vocation uses that, you can deal enough damage to cut off her head and then use the item to, turn enemies to stone, instantly killing even the strongest enemies in the game, like the drakes, though you don't really get the rewards when you do that. Still, it's a cool mechanic, and a different aspect of that mechanic is how you cut her head off or how effective you are at doing that leaves you with a higher quality head, which means it's basically got more charge, lasts longer, and you want the preserved version because it's just the best version. But as it turns out, there's an incredible trick you can do that's not just easier than all of that, but it's kind of busted. It's foolproof. You're going to need to be a magic archer and any slashing damage that's relevant, so a warfarer, and in this case I'm just running thief. Specifically, I'm using it for this weapon skill, sedative bowl, that is upgraded in this case, and essentially you charge up one single shot and fire it at a target. This will put the enemy to sleep. In the case of Medusa, which is a stronger enemy, we're going to need to send out 2 of these shots, but that will leave her exposed. This then allows you to run up with any slashing damage and immediately decapitate her for the instant preserved head, because you've instantly decapitated it in one hit. You can see how in this footage it wasn't even me, I just had my fighter pawn do it for me. But I'm going to do a quick run, live run for you so that you can see exactly how it works and how consistent it truly is. I'm going to aggro her so that she starts doing her thing, but I'm too close for her to actually shoot me, and then we're going to charge up the shot. We're just going to fire it at her. And then I'm just going to prep another one in case that's not enough. It looks like it was enough. So let's swap to the daggers. And then one single light attack. Instant kill. Decapitated. And then we have the preserved Medusan head. No problem. To say the least, this is absolutely busted and well worth knowing about if you're someone that likes to use these heads to cheese kill something or just have one on hand. Remember, you can put these in storage so they don't waste away as time passes, and then pull it out when you know you're going to go deal with something particularly annoying as just a you win ability. Moving on, we have a fantastic, pretty useful tip from Poor Duck in the comments. If you're carrying around different types of meat, you can cook it at the campfire and get whatever statistical buffs for a little while. But like any food, it ripens and rots over time. Now you're left with this meat that can be cooked but has some negatives and not so valuable anymore. Turns out there is a really good value to having this rotten meat, because whenever you encounter dogs, wolves, or even the big garms, which are this big wolfish type, you can choose to drop this meat on the ground. By going to inventory at the meat and choosing discard, you can plonk one of these down. What will happen is that they'll actually aggro to it. They'll go to it and start eating it mid-fight. You can see against this pack of wolves how insanely effective that is for completely CCing them. Now they're no threat at all, and I can attack them and they don't care. They're busy with the meat. What's awesome about this is that I can group them up with one item like that, kill them all so effectively, so quickly, and then the meat's not even gone. Sure, if I gave them enough time, they would eat it and it would be gone, but you know, you can kill them well before whatever the 30-second period it takes for them to consume it actually is. As you can see though, it does work on a variety of enemies, and it is really effective as sort of a hard CC on these enemies. I also read that it works on other creatures too, like ogres, and I went to test that. I gave it a good few tries, and unfortunately ogres don't seem interested. It does seem to be more of the animal, wolf, or dog types that are going to be concerned with this meat and have it truly CC them. Still, it is a very good tip because, you know, these agile enemies can be annoying. Having an instant I win mechanic you can use whenever you want and actually get more value out of something like rotten meat, it's just good. So thanks for that tip, Poor Duck. This next one is a follow-up to this tip that we made in the last video, and that's to do with Oxcart Stations. As you may know now from that video, or in general, when you use the await Oxcart Station, you're going to skip to the following morning so that the Oxcart's ready to go and you can actually use it. It's quite a nice feature. This is an alternative to sitting on benches and repeatedly skipping forward that little bit of time. You know, it's not a full 24-hour reset. Whereas every time you use the Oxcart Station, of course, it's going to take you to the next day's morning, and that's going to be that. It's a good showcase of this because I had a Medusa head on me, and that's now gone from preserved to completely rotten. In that quick example, I've shown you how you can skip 2 full days, and the reason you would do that is to progress storylines, or more importantly, revive and reset monsters. The problem is that the Dragonsplague is a mechanic, and a lot of people were saying that while this is a good thing to do, you need to be very aware of the fact that the pawns are progressing, and they might have the plague, and that might progress. To avoid this, you can send your temporary pawns just away, and that should prevent this from happening to you. As another little tip though, while we're here, it was mentioned in the comments how you don't have to just do one doze off and let that pass, and then, you know, your character kind of automatically gets off the bench and then sit down, do another. Technically, it's possible to absolutely spam the doze off button and then not interrupt the sitting. So as you can see, I can progress pretty quick, and you know, I don't have to go to the morning specifically to skip forward. And again, this is all to avoid costs of the innkeeper, especially if you don't have a house at the city that you're currently resting in. Either way, there's a few interesting ways you can skip time and avoid having to wait for resets. Next up, I stand uncomfortably close to you with this random helmet on, and that's for a reason. From the comments of last time, Brian Daniel let me know that there's a cool detail to do with Helms. I don't really spend a lot of time playing the heavy armor like vocations, so I've just never noticed this, and I wonder if most people have. In the last couple of episodes, we've talked about the subtle details between different armor sets. Different capes will change how the armor set or equipment you're wearing actually looks or functions, as well as what vocation you're actually playing, such as archer to, you know, suit the flexible arm that's necessary for that. In the case of heavy armored helmets like this that have a visor, there's a cool detail that, yeah, I was just completely unaware of. If you go to select it, you can choose to raise or lower the visor to change the appearance and, yeah, raise the visor. It's not exactly the same as being able to hide helm, which is one of the most requested features in the game, but it is something. Like, I can see my face. You can see how as I scroll through these, all of the visors are up, and if I try to swap to something else, I can't lower it unless it's the one that I'm actually equipping. But once you actually raise or lower a visor, it kind of passes over to the next helmets. So if this is a look that you actually want, well then that's how you can do it. Now if only we could hide helms and then keep the statistical bonuses of that, maybe in a free update or something. Okay, here's a quick and silly one. It was actually Cotton that told me about this. It turns out when you're camping with your pawns, you can stay in the camp for an extended period of time. Most people are probably gonna pop up their camp, do some cooking maybe, go to sleep, set it to night or day, whatever it is they actually need, and reset to get true health back. Maybe once or twice you'll have interacted with your pawns in this environment. Maybe you'll even gone to the fire and added some firewood. It's meant to be atmospheric and, you know, hang out with your pawns. Unfortunately, there's not like a lot of interesting dialogue or anything unique happening here. This is not Baldur's Gate 3. So I think a lot of people end up camping and pretty much getting out of that system very quickly. The little thing you might not have known that's just a little bit interesting is the fact that pawns will eventually get tired of waiting around for you to camp Arisen, and they'll just go to sleep. They lay down and yeah, they just go to sleep. Interestingly, it does not work if they're sat on the benches or the seats around the campfire, depending on what setup you have. Only the ones that start sat on the floor that aren't already taking their seat will eventually just lay down and go to sleep because they can't be bothered to wait for you. Sometimes when you're traveling with your pawns, they'll sit down as well, and maybe another pawn will berate them for doing it. But in a world where pawns pretty much mostly do whatever you do, the main character, it is nice to see a little bit of originality from them that isn't dragonsplague. But there you have it. Another episode of things you didn't know down. I hope we could clarify on some of those topics today, or just show you something a bit new and unexpected. If you have anything you'd add to the topics we talked about, or something new for the videos, then drop that in the comments. We might just cover it next time. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.